morning all. Welcome to day 9 training session. So today we are going to learn about Apex coding trigger, loops and handler classes, everything. So last week we had given an assignment that we have to go through the oops concept. I think most of them have gone through it. So it will be useful to understand today's session. So you have to be familiar with oops concept, and only it will be easy for you to write in any Apex code, any coding oops is the base thing. Okay, today's speaker and trainer is going to be Adityan, as you all very familiar with him. I think you know about him a lot right now. Last week we had a good session. So over to you, Adityan. You can start your session.
Okay, thank you, Anand. I think you gave good introduction about me than myself. Okay, good morning all and welcome to the session. So let me give a very brief introduction about myself before I get into today's topic. My name is Adityan Tirchuri and I'm having around 7 years and quarter years of experience in the Salesforce ecosystem, and I'm holding around 10 certifications. I'm into LinkedIn, and you can see my LinkedIn URL, my Trailblazer URL as well. I am also into blogging. I usually write more number of blogs related to Apex. If you get some time, maybe you can pay a visit over there as well. And then let's get into today's topic. So in our last topic, I'm not really sure how many of you have attended the last topic. In our last topic, we have pretty much covered the concept of writing a SQL query, and we also made ourselves familiar with the way how SOSL works, query language and search language. But I also told you that SOQL and SOSL are for the developers, but not for the end users. So what should we do? I hear a lot of background noise. Can everyone go on mute, please? So though we have good knowledge on SOQL and SOSL, if we do not know how to make use of them, then they will be of no use. You have to make use of SOQL and SOSL inside Apex. So in order to understand how to make use of them inside Apex, today's session will be quite informative for you. Though you understand, or let's assume that you are so good in writing a SQL query, and you cannot really give your SQL query to the end user and ask him to write queries and get his job done, right? Obviously, clients are like, they will be they're like our end users. They will be working only on the UI. They will not be writing anything at all. So you have to write code for them, and your code should be in such a way that it provides a good user interface to the user, such that when he clicks something or when he types something, he will be seeing the corresponding output. And whenever he is giving some input, based on the input he is giving, you need to show him the corresponding output. Taking input and providing output is nothing but a program. And when we speak about program, there are different kinds of languages, and one such language is Apex, which we use inside Salesforce. So this is about a very high level definition of a program. Now let us understand how is Apex different from other programming languages, or how did the evolution of Apex happen. So before we speak about Apex, let's understand what a program is all about. We all know, like most of the developers tend to write some programs, but what is a program? Program is nothing but group of instructions. There are some specific instructions, and that is nothing but a program. Like you see, this is a training program for us. What do we have in these training programs? We are having different modules. So there are group of commands for which we are trying to execute them as part of any program. So in the same way, in software terminology also, program is nothing but there are group of commands or group of instructions. What are they for? They will take the input, process the input, and will give you the output. That's it. That's what program is all about. Program is all about taking input and giving output. Then what is a programming language? Yes, we understood that there is something called as program, but what is a programming language? Programming language is nothing but the language in which you are trying to communicate with the system. Like how there are many programming languages means, okay, let's understand about the evolution of programming language in next few minutes. But first, for now, let us understand that there are different programming languages. Though the core concept of a program is to provide output, but there are different programming languages, and each programming language is having its own pros and cons. Okay, fine. When we speak about the evolution of programming languages, there are three categories. Anyone, you speak with anyone belonging to this current generation, how did the programming languages are evolve, how did they actually get started, means anyone will tell that they are of three categories, or they are of three families. Before we go into this, let us be, I know that pretty much everyone is aware of this fact, but I'm just trying to reiterate that computer can understand only zeros and ones. Computer is capable of understanding only binary codes, which is nothing but 0 and 1. So apart from 0 and 1, whatever you try to communicate with the computer, it cannot understand. This is a pretty basic thing which we might have been studying since our childhood. I mean, if at all the very first day you get introduced yourself to a computer, this is the first statement that you will encounter, that computer can understand only zeros and ones and not anything. Now you tell me, if you really want to get something from a computer, you're trying to generate some output from a computer, how difficult is it for you to convey something to computer by using zeros and ones? It is very, very difficult. Even if you really want to say the computer just to show number one, it is very difficult for you. You have to translate your requirement into zeros and ones, give it to the computer, and then expect the computer to show output, which is way, way, way difficult. But when computer was invented, that's how they actually used to communicate with the system. By making use of machine language, they used to do the translation of their own requirement into zeros and ones, and that is given to the system, and correspondingly system used to give the output. But people realized that it is becoming way much difficult to do the translation. They came up with next generation thoughts, and they came up with the concept of
जरूरी थी
assembly.
बहुत था. अभी तुम ये पढ़ ही रहा है ऑनलाइन, ये 1.5 GB में कितना
Anand,
देर तक वीडियो देख सकता है?
can you make everyone mute, please?
I muted everyone. Yeah, I have muted everyone. You can unmute and start.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we understood that machine language, communicating to system in machine language is kind of difficult, because zeros and ones are literally very hard for anyone to do the translation. By the time you complete your translation, you can actually get your work done. You don't actually need a computer also. Computer is helping you, but it is not able to understand you, so due to which it is not of a very great use. Then the developers or the programmers understood that, okay, there should be some improvement for this, there should be some enhancement for this, and then the second generation or the next advanced version came up with this name called assembly language. People belonging to electronics background can actually understand how this actually works. If you have worked on microprocessors or microcontrollers, you might have seen 8085 processors, 8086 processors. There are few commands that are available for us: add, sub. So what is this add function do? In this add, you can just give two numbers and it will immediately give you the output. Add, sub, there are few little commands, not all commands are available, there are very little commands available, but still this is far, far better than machine language. Reason being, it made the user quite easy by avoiding the purpose of writing zeros and ones. But again, there are many limitations to assembly language. It is not able to help in all the situations. There are very limitations. And then the evolution of high level language came. Okay, what is this high level programming language? High level programming language is a language which is almost same like the English language which we use in our day-to-day life. We tend to use the word called if. We have a word called integer. We have a word called while. You know, in our day-to-day life, we use these words, right? So those words are strictly taken into consideration, and based on those words only, our programs are being executed. Now you can ask me, you told me that system can understand only zeros and ones, right? And now you are telling me that if you speak in English, system can understand. How is it possible? Yes. For that, we have to understand the concept of compiler or assembler. So the developers thought in a very smart way, and they came up with a translator here. They came up with a translator. Now, what will this translator do? This translator will take inputs from you in the language that you're comfortable with. Okay, then this translator will do the translation into machine language. So they just kept one translator for the system to understand, and by using this translator, they made it easy for the end users. End users are programmers, anyone who is trying to perform something. Now, what is this translator called? Technically, those translators are nothing but assemblers. They just try to do translation of whatever you're trying to tell. Now, let me tell you, you're trying to speak with a person who knows Hindi, and unfortunately, you doesn't know Hindi. I'm just making an example, okay? You don't know Hindi, and you're trying to communicate with a person who knows Hindi. Obviously, you're not able to communicate. So, you'll take a person who knows your language and also Hindi language, and you will tell to him in your own language so that he can do the translation into Hindi language. So what is the prerequisite here? You need to have a translator, and the translator should know both the languages. He should know Hindi language, and he should also know the language that you are speaking with him. In the same way, when you are making use of Apex programming language, you need to have Apex compiler, or you need to have Apex assembler with you. If you try to use Java assembler, then it won't work. Why? Because Java assembler knows only Java language. If you try to give Apex program to Java assembler, it can't do the translation. It knows only Java language. In the same way, when you use C assembler, you have to give the input in C program language. If you give Java programming to C assembler, it can't understand, due to which due to which it will not give you the corresponding output. It will throw error stating that I'm not able to understand whatever you are telling to me. How can I tell to the system? That is what errors we have been getting. If you try to use C programming by using Java compiler, or if you try to give Java program to a C compiler. So the prerequisite is, when you are trying to write a program in some corresponding programming language, you need to have the respective assembler in place. That is the reason why you need to install some libraries if you want to execute some C programming language in your system. We have something called as JDK, Java Development Kit. If you want to write a program, you need to have that in place, because Java Development Kit will have the Java assembler in place, and by using a Java assembler only, you are able to do the corresponding translation. In the same way, for Apex also, we need to have those assemblers in place. By using those assemblers only, the respective translation does happen. But the advantage is, you don't really have to install anything. Reason being, Salesforce is completely on cloud, and Salesforce is providing us sales software as a service, infrastructure as a service, and platform also as a service, which means the assembler is also installed in the cloud. You just have to write the program, that's it. You don't really have to install anything, just write the program. But while writing the program, make sure that whatever program you're writing is understood by the translator that I have in place. If you write something in a different way, my translator cannot understand. If my translator cannot understand, I will throw an error. As simple as that. Whatever you're trying to write should be something which the translator is capable enough to understand. Okay, now how will I know what is the translator able to understand, and how will I know what the translator is not able to understand? Yes, for that specific purpose, we have, for any programming language, we have a specific syntax format. If you compare Java and Python, the syntax formatting is very, very different. There are semicolons in Java, and in Python there won't be any semicolons. The syntax format is very, very different. So in the same way, for every programming language, there is a specific syntax and some syntactics that are to be followed, and there are also some keywords. Let me tell you what a keyword is. Keyword is nothing but a word for which there is some meaning. That's it. Keyword means it is a word for which there is a meaning. Where is the meaning present? That meaning is again present in that assembler dictionary only. Dictionary is not the right word, library. So for every word that you are making use of, there should be some meaning. Only then the system will understand. If you come to me and tell me that please translate this to him, means first I need to understand whatever you're telling. How will I understand? If I know those words, only then I will understand. So you have to communicate with me in a way such that I am able to understand, so that I can translate it. In the same way, when you are trying to write a programming language, you have to ensure that whatever keywords you are making use of, or whatever style you are trying to implement in your program, is in a way such that the compiler is able to understand. If the compiler is not able to understand, what will happen? Program will not get saved. You will get an error. So that is the reason why, while writing programs, when you try to save them or when you try to compile them, you will be getting errors. What are those errors? Those errors are nothing but system is not able to understand what you are trying to convey. That is when we get the errors. So if you really understand how is the system behaving, or how can you convey to the system in a proper way, then you are a very good programmer. So this is a very high level introduction about the evolution of programming languages and how does a program actually work in real time. I will go to the next slides. Okay. Before we do that, when we speak about high level languages, it is more like a user speaking language. And in this high level language, there are two categories again. Yes, it is again an evolution, but still it's not like a entire new evolution. It's more like a subversion of it. When we speak about high level, there are structural programming languages. Some good examples for structural programming languages are C and COBOL. And then again, in structural programming languages, there are few limitations. When we speak about those limitations, the limitations that can be seen at a very broad picture are security. Security has become a huge constraint when we speak about structural programming language, and also reusability is not really that efficient in structural programming language. Means you have to end up writing duplicate code multiple times, so you're not able to reuse something that was already written. You're not able to make your logic into chunks and chunks so that corresponding chunk can be used when needed. That is not really feasible in a structural programming language. So keeping security and reusability into consideration, the programmers came up with a new subversion by name object oriented programming language, and this is the current trending category of programming language. I'm not speaking that this is the current trending programming language, but this is the current trend in any programming language. Object oriented programming languages are a must known paradigm for any of the programmer you see out there. You need to be aware of whoops. That is the reason why Anand conveyed in the group to make sure that you're aware of the concept of whoops before you come for this session. If you have not really done that, I request everyone to cover the concept of whoops after this session. Once this session is done, the YouTube playlist is also shared in the group. Kindly go through those videos in order to favor yourself. Okay, so when we speak about object oriented programming languages, the core concept of object oriented programming language is to encourage reusability and also to introduce security in place. And almost all the programming languages in the current day we use have the object oriented programming paradigm in place. Some good examples are Java and then Apex. Like, as Salesforce is completely using Apex as a platform, Apex is also an object oriented programming language. And also, let me tell you that entire Salesforce was built on top of Java. Entire Salesforce. So the way how Salesforce has been developed, by making use of Java programming language only, the Salesforce has been developed. That's not really important to us because we will be working on Apex, but just as a fact, entire Salesforce was built on top of Java. Then as I said that in structural programming language, we did not have the concept of we have the concept, but that was not to a very great extent of reusability and security, due to which whoops evolved. In the concept of whoops, when expanded object oriented programming, that is the concept. When we go into whoops, we have the flexibility to structure our code into different chunks. We can make a template, we can make a blueprint, and for that blueprint we can create n number of instances, and by using those instances we can keep our code efficient, steady, structured, and also we can have security in place. That is the biggest advantage of whoops. In whoops, the main advantage, it's not the main advantage, it's the biggest feature or the greatest feature of whoops is it is giving us a class. What is a class? Class is nothing but a block, and in this block what will be having? We will be having members. Members are nothing but variables. Methods are nothing but functions. I can elaborate this statement after some time if really needed, but if you have really gone through the concept of whoops, you must be familiar with what a class is all about. Then in this class, we have something called as method, and we also have something called as member. I am not focusing on methods for now because our whole session, today's whole session is much about triggers. So I'll be moving into triggers. Methods will be covered in the next session. Today, I will just speak about variables and then I'll quickly go into triggers. Okay. When we speak about a variable, first let us try to understand what a variable is all about. What is a variable? Before I speak, technically, or before going into the technicalities, what I wanted you to understand is, let's assume that you have created a notepad file in your system. You have created a notepad file. In that notepad file, you have typed some content. You have typed it, and then you have saved it with a name stating that introduction. That is the file name that you have given. That is the file name. As simple as that. You have created a file with the name introduction. That file is having some content inside it, which you will get to know only after you open it. But how are you trying to open that file? You are trying to open that file by using that name. How are you trying to search for that file? You will tap on this Windows button and then you will search for it. How are you trying to search for it? By making use of the name of the file, not by using the content. So in the same way, if you want to store something in the memory and for you to access it, you need to give a name for it. What is that? That is nothing but a variable. Whenever you are storing something, yes, you are storing something in some block, and if you want to refer to that, obviously you need to give something for it, and that is nothing but a variable. So variable is nothing but name of a memory location which is holding something. As simple as that. Variable is nothing but it is just the name of a memory location for which there is some content present. So if we speak technically now, variable is nothing but a container that holds some value which can be accessed by using its name. That's it. Because the same example of your notepad, you can have hundreds and thousands of files in your system, but how are you trying to open them, or how are you trying to search for them? By using the name only. In the same way, in your programming language also, I'm not speaking about the content that something is present in the memory, but if you want to access that particular content, you need to give a name for it, and that name is nothing but variable. That is what a variable is all about. So in interviews and all, if someone is really asking what variable is all about, you can just tell that variable is nothing but name of a memory location that is holding some content. A very simple high level definition, not with too many technical terms here. This is what a variable is all about. Now let me tell you that Apex is a object oriented programming language. Yes, we understood that Apex is object oriented programming language. Along with this being an object oriented programming language, let me also tell you that Apex is a strongly typed programming language. Okay, what is this strongly typed programming language? Strongly typed programming language means almost most of the programming languages are strongly typed, but when we speak about definition, what it is all about means, if you go to JavaScript, I'm not really sure if it is covered in the Aura concept or Aura is yet to be started or not, but in Aura you will get to know JavaScript in a good way. For now, I'm not going into too deep. I'll just give you an example. In JavaScript, you can create a variable by giving some value. Based on the value you give to the variable, it will determine the data type of it. If you don't know what data type is, just hold on for a moment, you will understand what data type is all about in some time. So you don't really have to specify which data type it belongs to. You can just say, I need a variable and this variable should store this. I need a variable and this should store this. Based on what you are trying to give, it will understand, okay, this is what this is about, this is what this is about. Okay, now for those who don't know what data type is about, I will give you an example. You are trying to save a file from Notepad. If you save this and if you observe the file extension, it will be .txt. If you save a Word file, extension will be .doc or .docx based on the version of Microsoft Word you are using. Same for Excel, .xls or .xlsx. For our understanding, let's assume that the file extensions are actually telling you the type of the file it is about, correct? If you do not say an extension, you cannot tell what file is, but if you see the extension, you are able to tell what file it is about. In the same way, if you want to convey to the system that this variable is holding something of this specific type, then we call it as data type. In Apex, it is a prerequisite that you have to first tell me the data type before creation of a variable. You cannot create a variable without telling me the data type. Okay, why is this? Because if you tell the data type, only then the corresponding memory location can be given. For each and every data type, memory allocation varies. For one data type, memory allocation could be 2 bits, but for the other, it could be 4 bits. So how will I understand how much memory do I really have to allocate? Based on the data type only. So it is a prerequisite that you have to first tell me the data type before creation of a variable. I mean, not before creation, at the time of creation of a variable. Only then I am allowing you to create a variable. Else, no, I am not gonna allow you to create a variable, and I will immediately throw an error for you. Okay, fine. Then let us understand what is a data type. The name is kind of self-explanatory here. Data type is nothing but it will just clearly give us information about the data that this variable is storing. It is not giving information about the data, but it is giving information about the type of data that it is storing. Like let's say when you say .xlsx, you will understand that it is an Excel file. You will not know the content inside it. You will just understand that it is an Excel file. In the same way, by using this data type, you will understand what type of data it is holding, but not what data it is holding. So it is a prerequisite. Now let us understand the different kinds of data types that we have in Apex. Again, data types might be varying from one programming language to another programming language, but most of the programming languages does follow similar pattern for data types. There could be one or two differences, but most of them are kind of similar here. Before I break into the data types that are present, let me also segregate them into two categories. One is primitive data type and the other one is non-primitive data type. For now, let us focus on primitive data types, and once we are familiar with primitive, then we can go for non-primitive data types. For creation of a variable, this is the syntax that we have here. First, specify the data type. Then, what variable do you want to create? I mean, what is the name of the variable that you want to give, and what is the value that you have to give? They're very basic syntax. You will understand this maybe when we perform some hands-on. I have some good examples that will really align you on what data type is all about and how a variable allocation assignment definition works. I'm going to the next slide, which speaks about primitive data types. So what is a primitive data type? Primitive data types are the basic data types that can't be broken down further. Okay. This statement might not really give us enough information. What is this broken down further? You will understand about this much when we go to the concept of non-primitive data types. So I am just holding on this specific statement. I'm not speaking anything about it, but I'm just telling you that this cannot be broken down further. Okay. Then what primitive data types do we have in Apex? These are the primitive data types that we have in Apex. The first primitive data type, I mean, there is no specific order. I just wrote them in this order only. So it's not that you have to start with integer only while explaining. There is no such order. These are the data types that we have. And in as per my slide, the first entry is integer. When do you create a variable of type integer, or what is the significance of integer? Means integer is basically a number. If you want a variable to hold a number, when I say number, there are no decimals. I'm stressing on this point, there are no decimal points. If you want a variable to hold a number within this specific range, I can't really count this number, please. So if you want a variable to hold a number, it could be either negative or positive within this specific range, then you can create an integer. Okay, fine. When should I go for string? String is more like characters, numbers, symbols, anything can be allowed. If you want a variable to hold data for which it can be in the form of a number or in the form of a character or in the form of some symbols, then you can go for a string. But ensure that one string variable cannot hold more than 1 lakh characters in length. It cannot hold. The limitation is 1 lakh characters. Third one is boolean. Boolean will have only three values. I mentioned two values here, but it will have three values: true, false, and third value is null. Null means you have not specified if it is true or false. In some programming languages, I don't know which programming language, but I'm pretty much sure there are some programming languages where the default value of a boolean variable is set to false, but in Apex, no, it's not defaulted to false. It is defaulted to null. If you do not specify it as either true or false, then the default value will be null. For all the variables belonging to any data type here, if you do not specify a value, then the default value is null for all the data types. If you do not specify, the value will be null. Okay. Date, pretty self-explanatory. If you want a variable to store a date, then date is the data type. If you want a variable to store a number, ranges are same, but if you want a variable to store a number for which there are some decimals, then decimal is the data type that you have to make use of. Now if you see, if you want to store a number with a great range, I mean you are not able to fit in this specific range. Let's say that you want a variable to hold a mobile number, or you want to hold an account number. The range will be quite huge, right? In such scenarios, you can make use of a data type called double, and the range is minus 2 power 63 to 2 power 63. It is quite smart enough to hold numbers, and it can also hold decimals. Now you can ask me, if I have double, then why do I need integer and why do I need decimal? I can use double all the time. Means at this point of time, you have to understand that memory allocation also varies for each data type. Double occupies more memory space when compared with integer and when compared with decimal, because double size is minus 2 power 63 to 2 power 63, due to which use corresponding data type based on the data that you're trying to deal with. It doesn't actually make sense if you want to store age of a person in a double field. What will be the maximum age of a person? Yeah, let's assume, I mean, even it can't really go beyond this, right? The age can't go beyond this, right? So identify based on the data that you're trying to get. You first identify the corresponding data type and then go ahead with variable creation. Just because it works even if you create a double, that doesn't make you a good programmer. Always try to understand that you need to consume little resources and provide maximum efficiency while generating the output. That should be the primary quality of a developer. Date time is a data type that holds both date and time. Like if you open a specific record, you can see for the created by, you can see the date time. And you must be familiar in the last session, because we have dealt with date time fields in our SQL queries. Then id field, though id is not a field that is shown to you on the layout, when you open a specific record on the url, you can see id of the record that you have opened. So id is also one data type that is available for us in Apex, and this id cannot hold a normal text. If you say id space variable name, some variable name, let's say id space recorded is equal to Aditya, means it will throw an error, because Aditya is not an id. Aditya is a string. So you have to ensure that you are giving corresponding value for the variable belonging to a specific data type. Then what is blob? Blob, it's like a binary language object, binary large objects are not language object. It's a binary large object. Basically, it is used to store some files, kind of. Like if you see, if you open a specific website where people will ask you to upload your resume, so what is the variable that is created in the backend to store the file means blob. Blob is the data type. We will be understanding this in detail maybe when you see some examples, but for now let us understand that these are the primitive data types that we have in Apex in order to support the programming paradigm. Okay, please repeat double. Okay, so integer is capable of storing a number. I'm specifically telling a number without a decimal point from this range to this range. Decimal, the range is quite same, but the only advantage in decimal is you can add a decimal point, you can add a point. But when we speak about double, the range is minus 2 power 63 to 2 power 63. It is same like integer plus decimal plus with a very great range about double. Now, if you get a requirement to store the age of a person, you can achieve it by creating a variable of type decimal, and you can achieve the same by creating a variable of type double, and you can also do this by creating a variable of type integer. But integer makes much sense to me. Reason being, age is always a number. Age will not have any decimal points, and age, the maximum age of a person that we can think of will not be more than 1,000 or 10,000 or at least 1 lakh. No person can have age more than 1 lakh years, right? At that point of time, you don't really have to create a variable of type double, though double will work for our scenario, but double will occupy so much memory space for your variable, which is not a good sign. Due to which, identify the corresponding data type for the variable you create based on the data that you're expecting for that variable. Okay, these are the primitive data types that we have in place when we speak about Apex programming language. Then let us see some examples now. With these examples, you will be familiar with the way how these things actually work. So before I go, any questions? Okay, sure. I'm not gonna answer any questions till the QA. Fine. So let's see some examples. So let me log into my Salesforce org. So I'm logged into my Salesforce org. As I told you that developer console is one-stop place for all the developers. I'm opening the same developer console. I'm quite comfortable in having my developer console as a window rather than a I'm quite comfortable in having this as a tab rather than a new window. So this is the developer console. You must all be familiar with this specific screen because we have worked on the query editor for the in the last week. Now I wanted to write some code snippet. I want to write a code snippet. Now I'm not writing any Apex class here. I'm not writing any Apex trigger here. I'm not writing anything. My programming language is Apex, but I'm not really writing anything. I just have a snippet. I want to see how this actually works. For this specific provision, Salesforce gave us a terminal, and in this terminal, you can just write some snippet and see how they're actually getting executed. It is just like a terminal where you can write. You don't have to write a main method. You don't really have to provide a UX. You don't have to do anything. Just write 3 or 4 lines and click on execute to see how they're actually behaving. If you really want to understand the functionality of a specific keyword, or if you want to really see how is this logic working only for a specific logic, not for the entire program, for a specific logic, then what you can do is come to debug, and there is something called as open execute anonymous window. The shortcut key is Control E. Either of them will work. So come here, debug, open execute anonymous window. So here you can write some Apex code, and that Apex code it will tell you is this Apex code fine or not, or what kind of output is it actually generating. Now this is in this I will be covering these examples for now. So first example is create a variable to hold user's age. Now we understood that we have to make use of corresponding data type. We should not actually create variables of different data types, though they are compatible or though they are fitting for our specific requirement. I should not create it. It might not throw any error, but still resource consumption is something which I have to take into consideration. Because I am a good developer, what I will be doing is I will be identifying, or I will be understanding that integer is a correct data type for my specific requirement. Okay, I understand that age is a number. So what data types do I have to store age? Integer is one data type, decimal is one data type, and double is one data type. Okay, now decimal will be holding something with dot notation. There will be a dot. Notation is not the right word. Dot will be there, like 5.5, 6.5. And I'm pretty much sure no one will really tell what is your age means. No one will tell 23.5 is my age. Everyone will give a very steady concrete number. So decimal eliminated, integer and double. I know that integer can store a range of around 2.1 million. I don't know the number, so if 2.1 million is wrong, please I'm sorry for that, but this is the range for it. Then when we speak about double, the range is very, very big. I feel that for my requirement, age cannot be more than this. So rather than going for double, even though double can actually fit my requirement, I am still going for integer only. So what will I do? I know that the syntax is, first I have to specify the data type. Okay, I know that my data type is integer. So I'm just giving it as integer. Then variable name. As part of the example, was the variable name mentioned? No, variable name was not mentioned. Now I will tell you. Whenever you are creating a variable name, make sure that the variable name is giving enough information to you what it is about. If you say integer x, after few days, if you like, just look at this, you will not understand why is this variable created for. You might again have to read the entire code to understand. So due to which, give proper relevant names for your variables, and it's like you are doing favor for yourself. Integer user age, to hold user's age. Okay, that's it. Integer user age. This is what we understood. I just created a variable and I am clicking on execute. Now if I click on execute, if you see here, I am getting an error, unexpected token user age. Why? Because system is not able to understand. Why is the system not able to understand? Because I am not following some I'm not following the proper syntax. For the system to understand, I have to write it in a way that it is able to do the corresponding translation. So what did I miss here? I missed to add a semicolon, because it is a statement, and so which semicolon is a prerequisite. If I put a semicolon, only then the system will be able to understand. Now if I click on execute, yes, it worked absolutely fine for me. Now I will tell you what I am thinking to do. So I have created a variable here. If you want to assign a value to the variable created, you can do it directly like this. Integer user age is equal to 28. You can do it right away here itself. Or what you can do is, you can do it over here as well. Anything will work. If you want, this process is called declaration. This is called declaration. You are declaring this variable of type integer, and this is called assignment. You can do both in a single line if you want, or you can do it in multiple lines. Anything should work. So what I do here, integer user age is equal to 28. Now if you want to print this, like how we have printf in C, system.out.println in Java, in the same way, if you want to print this, what you can do is system.debug is the statement that you have to make use of. In this system.debug, just put this user age, click on execute. For every okay, before I speak about debug log, I'm clicking on this debug log, so it will show you this. Now whenever you are trying to, I'm going out of the topic for 1 minute, so it will be easy. Okay, client and server. Client is nothing but the device which you are trying to perform some action. So it could be your mobile, it could be your laptop, or it could be your tab, anything, any device for which you're having some network connection. If you're trying to open google.com from your device, so obviously we know that client is nothing but your device. What will happen? The request will be sent from client to server. Your server will get to know that one person is trying to access our resources from this specific server. So from client, a request has been sent to server that I am trying to open it. Then what will this server do? This server will do some validations if needed, and it will send you something called as response. The system will try to send you some response to you back. So this is called request, and this is called response. You are trying to send something to the server because you're trying to access the resources, and what is the server doing? It is sending you some response. This response could be a successful response, this response could be an error response also. Anything can happen, but for doing this you need to have internet connection. This is a very basic thing. And request plus response is nothing but a transaction. Request plus response means you're trying to send a request and server had sent your response. This entire process is called one transaction. Few people call this as a round trip. In Salesforce, the terminology what we make use of this is transaction. You're sending something and server is sending you back something, and this process is called transaction. For each and every transaction, a log gets generated, and this log, if you go to this log step, for each and every transaction you make, a log gets generated, and this log will hold the necessary details of the transaction that was made. If you see how many bytes have been used, all the necessary details, how many SQL queries have been executed, how many DMLs have been executed, how many SOSLs have been executed as part of this specific transaction. So when you're trying to make a request and server is sending you back a response, this process is called transaction. And for every transaction you do, there will be one debug log. There will be one log generated, and in this specific log you can see all the necessary information. Now what am I trying to do? I know that I am trying to do something. Now you can ask me, you did not even hit the server, right? Why is it coming? Now you have to really understand the fact that the interpreter, the assembler, or the compiler of my Apex programming language is not present in my system. But where is it present? It is present in the cloud. Now for me to access something in the cloud, what should I do? Obviously I have to obviously I have to consume the resources that are present in the server. So I have to make a request to the server. And what is the server doing? This server is processing the code that I have written, it executed it, and then it had sent me some response. Understood? So if you are writing something in Apex, assume that you are actually making a transaction. If the transaction is successful, you will get one kind of output. If the transaction is not successful, you will get another kind of output. That's altogether a different scenario. But remember that for every transaction, there will be one debug log. There will be one log that gets created. This is about it. Okay, now integer user age is equal to 28, and I'm clicking on execute. After I have clicked on execute, this log got generated and I opened it. This log is showing all the information for me. I don't want to look at all the information. I want to look at a specific information. I'm clicking on debug only. When I click on debug only, it will filter out the log for you. Rather than showing all the unnecessary information, it will show you one specific information for which you actually printed something. You actually want to be printed in the debug log. Only that specific line will be shown to you. And this is how most of the developers do their debugging. Let's say that you have written some 500 lines of programming language and it is failing somewhere. You are not able to understand. So what will you do? You will try to put this system debugs in between, and then you will try to replicate the transaction, open the debug log, click on debug only, so that you will get to understand, okay, in which line I have my debug printed and in which line I did not see my debug line getting printed. Based on that, corresponding troubleshooting can be performed. But this is the process at a high level, not something too important for now. Then let me go to the PPT. Create a variable to hold user's mobile number. No symbols are present. Yes. Now I am pretty much sure that this is a number. As this is a number, I have to go with either integer or decimal or double. Yes, this is a number basically. But I'm pretty much sure that there won't be any points. So decimal eliminated. Now integer and double. Now when I look into integer, now let's think that I am trying to give a mobile number. Obviously, mobile number length will be of 10 digits. Let us count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The length is exactly 10 over here also. It is giving me, I think, somewhere around 21 crores or something. But if I try to give my mobile number, obviously my mobile number starts with 9. And 9 is obviously greater than 2, and integer cannot fit in. So at this point of time, integer is not helping me, and so I have to incline towards making use of this variable called double, because my mobile number, if you read your mobile number, it will be some around 98 crores or something, and integer cannot hold a value of that high range, due to which I am inclining towards double. So what I will be doing, double mobile number is equal to some number. What I'm just making this number, and then I am printing this up. System.debug mbl number. I cannot achieve this by using integer, though I am pretty much sure that double is consuming some good amount of memory space, but because of the number or because of the value that I am trying to give, I know that integer can't hold it, due to which I am going for double here. Now I am clicking on execute. Illegal integer. DOUBLE mobile number. Okay, yes, at this point of time we have to understand one more concept here, that 0.0. because we understood that double is basically used for storing decimals, and for our requirement we just gave a normal number. So due to which system is assuming that you are trying to give me just an integer, but you have created the variable type as double, due to which I don't really think this is a good thing, so I'm not really allowing you. Then what we did, we just made it as 0.0, so that the system can understand that yes, I understand, but my requirement is that I have to hold only this, and so I'm pointing something called as 0.0, so that now the system is convinced that okay, this is not an integer, this is more like a decimal but with a very high range, and so which double can actually fit in. This is how I will do. But now you can think that okay, why should a 0.0 be present? 0.0 is not at all a good for my specific requirement. How should I do this? Means yes, you will understand how to truncate this 0.0 or how to do the formatting. We also have one specific data type called long, which I don't want to really go into it because that's not really used on a very high frequent basis. But we have few predefined methods for every data type that do these specific things, which we will understand in the coming examples. But for now, remember that if you are trying to give a value to a specific variable, make sure that the value is compatible with the data type that you are making use of. This is something which you have to understand. Third example, create a variable to hold user's fax number. Okay, fine. This is a number, but there is a provision. I mean, there is a special caveat here stating that symbols are present. Okay, when symbols are present, obviously integer cannot hold, decimal cannot hold, double also cannot hold. Then what should I go for? Then I should go for string only, because string can hold characters, numbers, and also symbols. So what will I do here? I will say string fax number is equal to, remember that whenever you are trying to give something for string, make sure that you are enclosing this in single quotes. If you use this single quote, only then the system will understand that it is a string, else system will not understand. If you do not put single quote, system will throw an error, because we have to follow the syntax of the system. For the system to do the necessary translation, you have to make sure that you are following the way how it is expecting you to behave. So fax number is equal to, I'm just putting 980. I don't know if this is a valid fax number or not. I'm just writing something. And then I'm trying to print this as well. System.debug fax number. Clicking on execute. Yes, no error came up, which means this worked fine. Let me click on debug only. 28, 9.88 something came up, and 980. Yes, even this came up. Absolutely fine for me. Okay. Now I want only this specific part to get executed. I understand that if I click on execute, everything is getting executed. Now I want only this block to get executed. Just highlight your block and click on execute highlighted. You have one more button called execute highlighted, which executes only the logic that you have highlighted. If you see, only this logic is being executed here. Then let me go into the next example. Create a variable to hold today's date. Okay, this is a good example. Now we know that decimal cannot help us here, double cannot help us here, string also cannot help us here. So what do we have to do here? Create a variable to hold today's date. We know that this is kind of straightforward. We know that date is the variable that can actually help us. Okay, now I'm coming here, creating a variable of type date. I'm just giving some valid name here, today date. Okay, is equal to, now what is the format that I actually have to obey here? For integer, I'm just giving up a number. For string, I'm just putting single quotes and giving the value. But for date, what is the format that I have to understand? Is it YYYYMMDD, or is it MMDDYYYY, or should I put slashes in the middle as a separator, or do I have to use hyphen, or do I have to use a dot? Neither of them will work here. At this point of time, you have to understand that for you to provide a value for a variable of type date, you have to use a specific syntax called date dot new instance. This is the prerequisite for you. In this, provide the year. What do you want? Was there any year? What is the example? Create a variable to hold today's date. What is today's date? Today's date is 5th March, and 2022 is the year. 2022, month is 3, and then day is 5. Now let me print this. This is the syntax that has to be followed while creation of a variable of type date. You cannot just say month hyphen date hyphen year, or month slash date slash year, or date slash month slash year. That won't work. This is the only syntax that is something understood by the system for a variable of type date to get created and to be allocated some memory. When I click on execute highlighted, this is the date that I have given to the system. I mean, ignore the zeros because the processing happens in a different way behind the scenes, but this is the format. Now you can ask me, this is kind of difficult for me. Now I just want to give today's date. There should be something easy for me only for today's date, right? If I want to give a specific date to the system, yes, I understand that I have to follow. Is there something which is easy for me just for today's date, like how we have in formulas? Because even in formula also, if you want to give a specific date, you need to obey the syntax. If you work on formula fields, you will get to understand about the way how date works. I'm not going there, but for today it is kind of easy for me. Is there anything like that in system also? Means yes, it is there. Let me tell you that if you want to really do it, system dot today will give you today's date. Now you can ask me, what is the system? Everywhere you are using the system dot debug, system dot today. What is the system means? System is a class that is written by the Salesforce developers for us. System is a class. And what is this debug? What is this today means? It is a method. You will understand about class and methods in the coming sessions, but if you have already covered the oops, it will be easy for you to relate. System is a class and debug is a method. This method is actually accepting a parameter and that we are sending. In the same way, today is one method and this method is actually returning us today's date. So now if I click on execute highlighted, it will obviously print me today's date. And now you can ask me, today's date is 5, right? Why is it showing me 4? Because of the time zone that my system is currently present. I wanted to give my time zone as UTC -8, due to which when I subtract, the universal time console, it is still, around 11 p.m. For the time zone that I'm currently in, the time zone that I have set in my org, due to which I'm coming. Now, what you also should do is, as part of your, daily activities, try to change your time zone in your system and see how this is actually behaving. This is very, very important. Most of the developers make this mistake stating that they will not look into the time zone they are currently working for and they will write their code. It will behave in a different way. You need to strictly understand the time zone what your system is in, because when you say system dot today, you're asking today's date of the system, not yours. You and your system might not be in the same time zone. You might be in IST and your system time zone might be in some other Greenwich time, due to which you will see some discrepancies. So always make sure that when you are saying system dot today, what is the time zone of your system? Based on that, make necessary modifications to your code. That is important. Then create a variable to hold Jan 1st 2021. At this point of time, obviously I have to go with my previous syntax only. So date, specific date, I'm just giving the name as like this. Specific date is equal to Jan 1st. They gave it so clear. They gave create a variable to hold Jan 1st 2021. So the syntax is date dot new instance 2021 Jan 1st. So 0101. Execute highlighted. Variable does not exist today date. Okay, now if you see here, why is it telling me variable does not exist today date? Because I highlighted only this specific logic and I clicked on execute highlighted. Means the system is assuming that only these two lines are present and not anything else. And I'm trying to print something by name today date. Do I have anything by name today date over here? Nothing is coming up. Today date is something which system cannot understand. Today date is neither a variable name nor a keyword. How will the system understand? So system is telling, I don't know anything by name today date, so I'm not executing this. See, variable does not exist today date. I made a mistake here. So let me print something like this. Now let me click on execute highlighted. So these are the errors that you will be getting while executing your program. If you are getting an error, it doesn't mean that you are a bad developer. It means that system is not able to really understand what you are trying to convey to it. So try to understand from the perspective of a system while writing your programs, and in that way you will be able to achieve the output that you are expecting. So if you see 2021 January 1st, then create a variable to hold October 2nd 1869 8 p.m. Okay, so now this is kind of evident that we have to go with the date time data type. Again, date time, I'm just giving specific date time is equal to date time dot new instance. Same example, I mean similar approach. You have to give date and then you have to give time. Or what you can also do is, it will show you suggestions which is good for us. Let me expand this a bit. If you see here, new instance is having different formats here. Either you can give a date and then a time, or you can give integer, I mean year, month, date. Let me put this in a new line so we can see every suggestion. If you see here, either you can give just date and time. If you give date and time, you need to create a variable of type date, and you need to create a variable of type time, and then give those two variables to this, so that it will give you the date time. Means you have to give the date created in one variable, you have to give the time created in one variable, and give this to this method, so that this will give you date time. Or provide integer month and day. That's it. Which means you are giving year, month and day, and it will give based on the time zone you are in. It will try to do the corresponding manipulations. Basically, if you give 21st August 1993, it will say 21st August 1993 12 o'clock. But if you are in UTC -8, it will give 20th August 1993 8 p.m. That's what you, because it is UTC -8, means 12 -8 will happen. Leave about the conversions for now, leave about the UTC, that will just confuse you. If you say, if you give this, it will give you exactly at 12 o'clock. If you give this, you have to specify date created in one variable, time created in one variable. But if you look at this specific option, new instance, you have to provide year, month, day, or minutes and seconds, whatever are present. So I'm quite comfortable with this for now for my example, so I'm choosing this. So as per the example, what should I give for year? Special create a variable to hold October 2nd 1869 8 p.m. So 1869, month is 10, day is 2, 8 p.m. So I'm giving it as 20 here, because 12 plus 8 is 20. 00 and seconds I'm giving 00, and then I'm trying to print this. Clicking on execute. Okay, I executed everything, but it should be fine. So when I click on debug only, so I'm seeing this. Now you can ask me, why is it showing me 4 p.m? This is wrong, right? You have given it as 2nd October, and then you have given it as 12 o'clock. I mean, no. 2nd October, and you have given it as 8 o'clock. Why is it showing me something like this? This is wrong, means no, this is right, because system's time zone is different. Again, I'm going to the same point. System's time zone is different, due to which you are seeing these conflicting values. Try to align your system time zone with yours. You can do that by going to company information over here in the quick find, type company information, and you can do it, but I'm leaving that to you. I want you to explore on that specific area. So this is the way how you are creating variables and assigning values to them for different data types. Based on the data type that you are trying to create, make sure that you are giving compatible values. Now I will show you something. I give something like this, and I am trying to click on execute. See, immediately it is telling me that illegal assignment from string to integer, which means system is so sure that when you are using single quotes, it is of type string. And what are you trying to do? You are trying to assign a string value to a variable of type integer, which is not accepted, and so which you are getting an error, something like this. Illegal assignment from string to integer. So make sure that you are not making these kind of mistakes while writing any Apex code. Special mention, null object, and then value of. Okay, as I said that if you do not give any value, then what will be the default value of these specific variables? Means it will not be 0. For an integer, it will not be 0. It will be null. Be it any data type, if you do not specify any value, the default value is null. Now let me tell you a big nightmare for most of the developers. There is an error called attempt to dereference a null object. Attempt to dereference a null object. I will show you what this is about. Now I got a requirement stating that user will be giving one value for a specific variable. Okay, fine. User has given. Now you have to print, you have to print the same value by adding 1 to it. You have to print the same value by adding 1 to it. So I will show you how should I do that. So what I should do is user age is equal to user age plus 1. This is what I have to do basically. I'm just trying to add 1 to it. Or most developers, what that is, they use something similar by saying plus plus. When you say plus plus, it will just increment by 1. So this is what I'm trying to do here. I am assuming that user gave value for this user age, and I'm trying to increment it by 1, and I am trying to execute it now. Now if you see here, I'm getting an error stating that attempt to dereference a null object at line number 2. At line number 2, it is telling me that I'm trying to refer something which is null, which is user age. User age is null. What am I trying to do? Though it is null, I'm still going into the null and making some manipulations to it. I'm telling to the null, hey null, increment yourself by 1. Null means it's an empty space. what are you trying to do in that empty space? It will not work. So whenever you are trying to refer something null in your Apex code, immediately system will throw an error stating that you are trying to refer something null. Either make it blank or default it with some value, or put some value to ensure that it is not breaking, or at least have one if condition to make sure that you are not trying to refer something null. If it is null, please do not let this statement get executed. So I mean, there are multiple ways. You will understand the different ways for corresponding scenarios, but the thing that you have to remember is, whenever you create a variable, it will be of type null. Make sure that you are defaulting it with some or the other value for most of the errors to not occur. This is very important. Whenever you create a variable just like this, and if you try to make some manipulations to it, if you assign it, well and good, but without assigning, if you are trying to make some manipulations to it, immediately you will get an error stating that you are trying to refer something which is null. It is null and you cannot make any manipulations. If you want to make a manipulation to it, put some value, do your manipulations to the value. Why are you trying to make some manipulations to something which is not even existing? You're trying to make manipulations on an empty void space. Why do you want to do it? That is entirely wrong, is what the system is trying to convey. So make sure that you are trying to default it with some values. For most of the primitive data types, it is error might not occur all the time, but when we go into non-primitive data types, this is very important that you are trying to default them with some value at the time of creation itself. That is a very good practice that has to be followed. It's more like a prerequisite. Think that it's more like a prerequisite, though system will not throw an error for you while creation, but while execution during the runtime, it might throw you some errors. I'm just repeating whatever I just said. My point is, when you create a variable, the default value is null for any data type. If you do not assign, it will be null. When it is null, if you try to make any manipulations to this specific variable, it will throw an error called attempt to dereference a null object, because there is no value and you have written your code assuming that there will be some value. Make some manipulations to that value, but as there is no value present to it, your statement cannot be executed, and there is no better way for me to convey to you that you are trying to refer something null other than by throwing an error. So I'm throwing an error stating that you are referring something which is null, which is not accepted by me, and so which I'm getting an error. So this is the thing. We will understand about null pointer exception in a very better way when we deal with non-primitive data types. So this is about primitive data types. Then what is non-primitive data type? Non-primitive data type is also something which is given by the same programming language, but the advantage is they can be broken down further. Okay, I remember that for primitive data types, we understood that they cannot be broken down further, and for non-primitive data types, we are telling that they can be broken down further. Okay, now let us try to understand. Now, for an integer, we know that integer range is from this to this. For a double, the range is from this to this. The same double variable can hold a value of 0.0, and the same double variable can hold a value of 15 crores. The same double variable. When you look into the memory allocation is same for both. Though the variable is holding 0.0, let's assume that the memory allocation is 4 bytes. I'm making it up. I'm not sure about the memory allocation. I'm just assuming. For a double variable, the memory allocation is 4 bytes. Even if the double variable is holding 0.0, memory allocation is 4 bytes. Even if a double variable is holding 15 crores, the memory allocation is 4 bytes only. It is kind of not making sense to me. Why 4 bytes for a variable that is holding just 0.0? Why the same amount of space for a variable holding something of very high range? Means yes, there is no other way around. It cannot be broken down further. No matter what kind of value you're trying to give, even if it is the least value or even if it is the highest value, the memory that it is occupying is still the same when it is a primitive data type. Then what is non-primitive data type means? In a non-primitive data type, you have the flexibility to add elements dynamically. So based on the elements that you're based on the values that you're trying to give, corresponding memory will be allocated. You will understand that, but understand the fact that there is a limitation in the primitive data type, that they can't be broken down further, but that is completely made possible in non-primitive data type. How means? Based on the values you are trying to give, corresponding memory allocation does happen, though the values are belonging to same data type, but still the memory allocation varies. Two variables belonging to same type. We will understand that now. Data type supported in